Welcome to the Fear and Greed Afternoon Report for Friday the 19th of August 2022. I'm Sean Aylmer. Every afternoon we've got the 5 stories that happened today that you need to know about. Story number 1, the S&P ASX 200 closed up 2 points, just 2, to 7,114 today. While the energy and materials companies did well, the banks and healthcare stocks fell back. Among the large caps, ANZ and industrial property giant Goodman Group fell around 2%. CSL and National Australia Bank were down around 1.5%, and Commonwealth Bank was 1% lower. Woodside Energy closed up 4%, while Rio Tinto was 1% higher. Best on the day, though, was Santos, which rose more than 6% after a bunch of upgrades following this week's earnings announcement and rising oil prices. Whitehaven Coal jumped 5.8% on the back of higher thermal coal prices. TPG Telecom share price tumbled 13% after the telco missed earnings estimates in its half-year results. It also reported softer than expected growth in revenue per user. That was the worst of the top 200. Second worst was Poultry Group Ingham's. It outlined a big drop in profit on the back of much higher feed, ingredient and transport costs. Its share price tumbled 9%. Story number 2, the federal government has released a discussion paper on the government's strategy to boost uptake of electric vehicles, and the thrust of it is to make EVs cheaper. I like that. The government wants to remove fringe benefits tax and import tariffs on EVs, which will cut prices by around $5,000, according to Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen. He said high prices and long delivery times were slowing take-up, making Australia a dumping ground, his words, for expensive and outdated models. Fewer than 10 EV models are now available under $60,000. But other industry experts said supply is a bigger issue than tax reform and more needs to be done. There's also a push to introduce fuel efficiency standards that would force manufacturers to produce more electric vehicles. We're going to hear plenty about this in the next few years. Story number 3, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison is coming under fire this time for making light of his decision to secretly take on 5 portfolios during the pandemic. Mr. Morrison has posted photos of himself in various situations, spoofing his own decision. The current Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said what Mr. Morrison did wasn't a laughing matter. Mr. Morrison has been criticised from within his own party and beyond over his decision to take over 5 portfolios and not tell colleagues, including the responsible ministers, that he was doing so. His social media efforts aren't going to help the situation. Story number 4, Australia's biggest gold miner, Newcrest, outlined a 16% drop in pre-tax profit today, but was upbeat about the future, saying production would lift by 8% this financial year, and that was enough to send Newcrest's share price up nearly 4%. Newcrest has had 3 years in a row of declining production. Last year it mined around 2 million ounces of gold. That decline has always dragged on Newcrest's share price, but the upgrade today was welcomed by investors. Newcrest has been spending on growth options after its flagship mine in Cadia, Central West New South Wales, passed its peak production point. The company recently purchased Canada's Brucejack mine for $2.8 billion. And finally, story number 5. Indonesian officials have said that US President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping will attend the G20 summit in Bali in November. If it occurs, it would be President Xi's first trip outside China since January 2020. China has pretty much shut all its borders to international travel during the pandemic. It would also put the two in geographical vicinity to meet to discuss the growing number of issues between the two nations. That's it for the afternoon report for Friday, the 19th of August, 2022. Don't forget to hit follow on the podcast and find Fear and Greed on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. Join Michael Thompson and I tomorrow morning for the Weekend Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your evening.